Ethiopian Airlines Flight 409, into the Mediterranean. A takeoff in darkness, a storm over Beirut, and a tragedy that left 90 souls lost at sea. It was the early morning of January 25, 2010, at 2:37 a.m., when Ethiopian Airlines Flight 409 departed Beirut Rafik Hariri International Airport on its scheduled route to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The aircraft, a Boeing 737-800 registered ET-A&B, carried 90 people, 82 passengers, and 8 crew members. Minutes after takeoff, during a violent winter thunderstorm over the Mediterranean, radar contact was lost. The plane vanished from screens and plunged into the sea roughly 3.5 miles, 5.5 kilometers, west of Naama, a coastal town south of Beirut. The souls on board among those lost were passengers from 9 different nationalities: Ethiopia, 23, Lebanon, 45, Britain, 2, Iraq, 2, Syria, 1 to Turkey, 1 to France, 1 to Canada, 1 Russia, 1 8 crew members were Ethiopian. No one survived. The flight and the storm, the Boeing 737, lifted off in strong winds and heavy rain, turning west over the dark Mediterranean, before looping back toward the planned route south to Addis Ababa. Air traffic control instructed the pilots to maintain a specific heading, but within minutes, the plane began a series of erratic turns. Witnesses along the coast later reported a flash in the sky and burning debris falling into the water. At approximately 2:41 a.m., just 4 minutes after takeoff, Flight 409 disappeared into the sea. The search and recovery. Within hours, search and rescue teams from Lebanon, France, the United States, and Cyprus joined local naval units to comb the area. Parts of the fuselage, engines, and personal belongings were recovered from the water in the first days. By the end of the week, both black boxes, the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder, were located and retrieved from depths of about 45 meters. Divers also recovered many of the victims, who were later flown to Addis Ababa for burial ceremonies attended by grieving families and national leaders. The main wreckage, however, was not fully lifted from the seabed. Investigators photographed and mapped the underwater debris field extensively, but due to depth, storm conditions, and fragmentation, only select components were brought to the surface for analysis. To this day, most of the aircraft remains on the floor of the Mediterranean, what investigators found. The final report, released by Lebanese authorities in 2012, concluded that the accident was caused by loss of control of the aircraft shortly after takeoff. The pilots had likely become spatially disoriented, unable to determine the aircraft's true position or attitude, while flying through violent weather in complete darkness over open water. Investigators found that the plane's flight path included a series of uncontrolled turns and climbs inconsistent with normal departure procedures. The report noted that pilot control inputs were at times incoherent, suggesting confusion as the aircraft entered a right roll and nose-down attitude before impact. Contributing factors included the nighttime conditions, the complexity of Beirut's departure routes, heavy turbulence, and possible fatigue. Ethiopian Airlines, however, formally rejected parts of the report, arguing that external factors, including possible mid-air explosion or lightning strike, were not adequately ruled out. Lebanese officials maintained that no evidence supported that theory. The aftermath. The tragedy shocked both Lebanon and Ethiopia. Families gathered along the Beirut coastline for days, watching ships bring ashore fragments of the aircraft and personal effects of the passengers. In Addis Ababa, national mourning ceremonies honored the crew and the victims, many of whom were business travelers, aid workers, and families returning home. Ethiopian Airlines established a compensation fund and worked closely with recovery teams, though the emotional toll on the airline and its staff was immense. The loss of Flight 409 became a reminder of the challenges of night departures in storm conditions and the importance of instrument awareness training in modern aviation. Legacy and Lessons Flight 409 was Ethiopia's first fatal accident involving a Boeing 737-800 and Lebanon's worst air disaster in decades. It underscored the need for enhanced spatial orientation training for pilots flying at night over water, improved weather and radar coordination between control towers and crews, review of departure routes from airports surrounded by sea and terrain. The crash also reinforced international cooperation in search and rescue missions, uniting nations in the effort to recover answers from the sea. Final reflection. Ethiopian Airlines Flight 409 lifted off into darkness and storm, a routine journey that lasted less than 5 minutes. 90 souls were lost, and though fragments of the aircraft were recovered, the sea still keeps most of its secrets. For the families, the Mediterranean remains both a grave and a reminder that every flight carries not just people, but dreams, and that even in the safest skies, nature can humble us in moments.